On Wednesday, Vice-Admiral Mark Norman's lawyer said, quote, "No person should walk into a courtroom fighting their elected government or any sort of political factors." Unfortunately, this is exactly what happened in the Mark Norman trial. This Prime Minister interfered in the judicial process. He withheld documents from the defense. They've denied Mark Norman access to his own emails. Why did the Prime Minister so clearly have his finger on the scales of justice in the Mark Norman case?
The Honourable Minister of Border Security.
Mr. Speaker, unfortunately, almost everything that the member opposite just said is not correct. And in fact, as the Director of Public Prosecutions stated yesterday, there was no contact or influence from outside the Public Prosecution Service, either in the initial decision with respect to the laying of this charge or the decision to stay the charge. And Mr. Speaker, the member opposite should know that all of the procedures conducted by the Office of the Public Prosecutor and the RCMP are totally independent of the Government of Canada.
Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
Mark Norman's lawyer said, quote, "What you don't do is you don't put your finger and try to weigh in on the scales of justice. That is not what should be happening." That's right. But that's exactly what did happen in the Mark Norman trial. The Liberals actively worked against him. The Prime Minister said Norman would be charged while the investigation was ongoing. He refused to waive cabinet confidentiality. He withheld thousands of documents from Norman's defense team. How does the Prime Minister defend this blatant interference in an ongoing judicial proceeding?
The Honourable Minister of Border Security.
Mr. Speaker, quite frankly, it's a little offensive to hear the member opposite impugn the integrity of the RCMP and the independent conduct of their investigations, and also to impugn the integrity of the Public Prosecution Services, who has been crystal clear that at no time, Mr. Speaker, was there any contact or influence from the government, and that all decisions with respect to initiating the prosecution or staying it were made independent of the government.
The Honourable Member for Chilliwack Hope.
The Prime Minister wants Canadians to believe that because he failed when he tried to politically interfere in yet another criminal proceeding, that his failure should be celebrated as an exoneration of his bad behaviour. That's like saying that someone who tries to rob a bank should get off the hook if they fail to get away with the cash. The Prime Minister withheld documents, coached government witnesses, and tried to bankrupt Mark Norman. How does this Prime Minister defend this blatant political interference in the judicial system?
Honourable Minister of Border Security.
Mr. Speaker, once again, none of that is actually true. Mr. Speaker, let me be clear that all procedures conducted by the Office of the Public Prosecutor and by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police are totally independent of the Government of Canada. The entire structure of their work is designed to keep it independent. Decisions that are made on the basis of proper legal considerations and the evidence, and all of those considerations are weighed carefully in court before a judge. Mr. Speaker, the matter was entirely without political influence, and that's exactly what the Director of Public Prosecutions averred yesterday.
The Honourable Member for Richmond-Arthabaska. Mr. Speaker, this Prime Minister has done his best to end the contract with Davy Shipyards. He tried to destroy the reputation of Vice-Admiral Norman, who stood up to Liberal interference. He doesn't like anyone opposing him, as was the case with the former Attorney General. Another strange coincidence, when the former Parliamentary Secretary said he would testify against his own Liberal government, the charges were dropped. If that's not political interference, what is it?
Mr. Speaker, I think Canadians deserve better than innuendo. And so I would remind the member opposite, when legal matters are to be investigated, they are investigated independently by the RCMP. Any decision with respect to the laying of charges are made independently by the Director of Public Prosecutions. And as the Director of Public Prosecutions made crystal clear yesterday, there was no contact and no influence to any member of the Director of Public Prosecution Services Canada in the determination of these decisions, that there was no influence by the Government of Canada.
The Honourable Member, Mr. Speaker, only the Liberals can see political interference in this case. The truth is that the Liberals didn't want this contract to go to Davie Shipyards. So what did they do? They tried to destroy the career of Vice-Admiral Norman, an honest man respected by all. This Prime Minister refused to provide evidence to Vice-Admiral Norman, and Norman's lawyer even said yesterday that the PMO was advising witnesses. So if this isn't political interference, what is it?
With respect to the court order to produce documents, here are the facts. The Government of Canada met all of its obligations with respect to third-party record applications. All documents from the priority individuals identified by the defence in February were in fact provided to the court. In total, Mr. Speaker, over 8,000 documents on behalf of the 7 government organizations were submitted to the court over the course of this process. And Mr. Speaker, I think it's important to acknowledge that on this matter, both the judge and the Crown thank departmental officials for their excellent cooperation in this process.
Honourable member